Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Financial Issues. Great to be here with you all today. Seth Udinsky here with you this morning. Hey, welcome. If this is your first time tuning into the show, we're grateful to have you. We're a show that helps you be good stewards with the money that God has given to you. So we offer a investment strategy, portfolio options for you to be able to do your very best with the money that God has given you to build a good, solid, long-term portfolio by investing in companies that do not contradict your Christian values. And so we help you keep your money out of companies that are using shareholder dollars to fund things like abortion or pornography or gambling or the LGBTQ movement or other vices like that. We want you to be God-honoring with the money that is given to you. So that's who we are, and welcome. It's great to have you all. For our recurring listeners, those of you who've been with us for years and years, welcome back. Great to see you all. I hope you'll chime in on the chat this morning. Make sure to say hello and a Merry Christmas to you all as well this morning. On today's show, we got the latest market updates, of course. We'll get some economic headlines also. Some things happening globally as well that I want to bring to your attention for sure. Also, our topic of the day today will be the cash position. So it's been a topic on our show for the last few months, is kind of what to do with this cash position in your portfolio. We're now in a period of relative redeployment. For several months, we were kind of in a hunker down mode where we're just trying to keep some of that cash on the sidelines. Now we're starting to see some redeployment of that as well. Hopefully it'll be of service to you as you consider where to kind of utilize some of this powder that you've kept dry for the last several months. Also, Sam Case will join me to discuss the latest news headlines both in the economy and the world, including a pretty positive outlook under the Trump administration when we're talking about the financial sphere. Also a pretty positive outlook under the Trump administration when we're talking about the military sphere. So it'll be an interesting show. I'm grateful for each of you joining us, and I would encourage you to chime in as well again on that live chat. The chat is open and ready for you all to join us. Let's open our show as we always do in the scriptures, folks. Galatians 4:4-5. Paul says this, "But when the set time had come, God sent his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption as sonship." So we do a Friday Bible study every morning that I have the privilege of leading. I will not be leading it this Friday, though. Pastor John Webb, who's a dear friend of mine, one of our board members, a faithful pastor for many, many years, he's going to be filling in for me this Friday as I'll be with my son for his surgery. Pastor John is planning, God willing, to preach out of this very verse. So a little bit of a teaser for you here. I'm thrilled to hear what he has to say. But just to say a quick thought about this verse, you know, the Christmas story, and we're 2 weeks away if you didn't notice, it teaches us many lessons. Obviously, the greatest of which is that we have our one way back to right fellowship with God, and that is through the Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, born of woman, born as a baby to die in our place and to rise again. That is the central message of the Christmas story. But there is another wonderful lesson, many lessons, of course, but one that I want to highlight here that we learn from the Christmas story is that God's timing is perfect. God's timing is perfect. God never gets his timing wrong. If you've ever been late to somewhere, you know that your timing might not always be perfect. I've been late to places as well. Our timing is not perfect, God's is. This verse is sometimes translated elsewhere as in the fullness of time. In the fullness of time. And it just shows us that God knows what he's doing, folks. He knows exactly what he's doing in everything. Jesus came into the world at just the right time for the gospel message to thrive. It was right as the Roman Empire was gaining in power, which means there was a common language and common customs throughout the known world. And so in the fullness of time, Jesus comes into the world so that the gospel message can go forth with great urgency and spread rapidly, as it certainly did. So I want you to be encouraged, folks. God's actively working to accomplish his good purpose. His timing is perfect. His ultimate purpose for you and me, of course, is adoption as sons and daughters, as this verse says. So be encouraged by that. Let's be good stewards. As we talk about being good stewards of our money, ultimately being good stewards of this great gospel message, especially at Christmas time. Hey, I wanted to mention for all of you partners, you probably got an alert this morning or last night. We're asking you to act immediately and sell CS25. That alert will explain a little bit more of the reasons why. The commentary will explain some of that. There's been some long-term issues with this company, so please act on that alert today. CS25. If you got that sell alert, make sure to do that. Make sure to check your spam folder as well. Sometimes those will end up in the spam folder. So, folks, before we get to the markets today, I want to share some really important news concerning our persecuted brothers and sisters in the Middle East. There is a really terrible conflict going on right now in Syria. And Sam, I'd love to invite you on here and just give us an update on what's been going on, particularly for the Christians in Syria. What do we need to know about this?
Yeah, we really do need to be praying for our Christians, brothers and sisters in Syria. I know we're a financial show, so we typically don't deal with international issues too much, but we are also a Christian show, so this is of the utmost importance for our brothers and sisters around the world. So, as you mentioned, the situation in Syria is quite up in the air for Christians. Over the weekend, Islamist rebels overthrew the Assad government. Assad is a brutal dictator in the country of Syria, but now he's being replaced by terrorist-connected rebels with connections to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So this is the Middle East. You don't really have the best options, but now the big question is, what's going to happen to the Christians? Christians didn't really love Assad, but many of them sided with him because he was a stable influence in the region to keep the crazies at bay. And now that the crazies are here, we're really not sure what's going to happen. International Christian Concern says the coming days and weeks will be crucial for the fate of the Christian community. Meanwhile, In Defense of Christians, that's another Christian group, said Christians have become the target of widespread crime and vandalism in the city of Aleppo. The group is adding that basic necessities, including food and medical care, are scarce and inaccessible. It should be noted that the incoming rebels, they are promising right now to be friendly to Christians and religious minorities. We'll have to see if that actually ends up being the case. You can say all kinds of things, but it depends on what you're actually going to do when you take power. So do pray that that is actually the case and that these incoming rebels will keep their word and protect the Christians.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up to us, Sam, for sure. We were talking, Sam and I, before the show, and it kind of seems like it's sort of, they're kind of like going from the frying pan into the fire, you know, with this one. As you said, that Assad government, not the best, but possibly better than what they're about to experience right now. This is really scary stuff, folks, and we need to remember to always be praying for our persecuted brothers and sisters throughout the world. I think especially in the Middle East. Especially in the Middle East where there's heightened tensions. There's a lot of talk about there now for sure. You hear us talk often about how we need to be praying for the protection of the Jews in Israel, and of course we have to. But I do think that there is something to be said for Christians first and foremost. Our first priority is our brothers and sisters in Christ, and I say that with no apology whatsoever. And I also say that with no disrespect towards the other people that we need to be praying for sure. But first and foremost, our responsibility is for our brothers and sisters in Christ. So I would urge you to pray for these persecuted believers, especially in these areas like the Middle East, where particularly under the threat of radical Islam, Christians are targeted pretty heavily there.
Seth, I will say I read a little bit of good news. I know I did read that report that said Christians are facing vandalism and attacks in Aleppo, at least. But then we're also seeing some other reports on the ground where Christians are saying the insurging rebels have surprisingly been nice to them. They said, they look like scary Islamic terrorists because they are, but weirdly enough, when it comes to us individual Christians, so far, they're actually treating us pretty well. So I don't know if you can trust them at their word. Maybe they're trying to just put on a nice face for the international community at this time, but let's pray that it actually does turn out better than we can hope, because right now it really doesn't look too good.
Amen. Thank you for that, Sam. I appreciate you bringing that up to us. Kind of switching gears here, Sam, to a little bit more of a financial topic, but still in that same realm of geopolitics and stuff. It's going to be interesting to see what the future of the war in Ukraine looks like here as we get the Trump administration in. What has Trump said recently regarding the war in Ukraine?
Well, it's interesting. Trump is actually capitalizing on the current chaos in Syria to leverage an end to the war in Ukraine. The Assad government was allied to Russia and Iran. So Trump put out a statement over the weekend poking Russia a little bit, saying, hey, man, your boy Assad, he couldn't handle it because you weren't there to help him because you're too busy fighting this war in Ukraine. It's made you weak. You need to come to the table and work out a deal. He said in his post on Sunday that he wanted an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine, calling Russia a weakened state because of the war. Trump said, I know Vladimir Putin well, and this is his time to act.
Yeah, very good. And of course, this came after just another announcement of more money sent to Ukraine as well.
Yeah, $988 million to be exact for Ukraine.
Goodness. So I don't know what the current tally is, Sam, but I do know that we have sent far too many dollars over to this.
It's more money than I have, I can tell you that.
That's for sure. Same here. Absolutely. Probably more money than most of our listeners do as well. And that's not a knock on you listeners. I know many of you have done well in your portfolios. It's just a picture of how much money we've sent over there over the last 2 years. I do hope we see an end to that war.
Listen, if you're getting billions upon billions of dollars in your portfolio because of our plan, please let us know, because we want to talk to you about that.
Right. Exactly. So good to keep up to date there, Sam. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Folks, I don't think we have time to get to the markets here, but I do appreciate you all joining us for the show today. We got a lot more to get to here on the show. We'll talk about the cash position. We'll also talk about the markets, of course, and get to some more headlines as well here on Financial Issues. Hey, listen, if you're looking for a great Christmas gift to get one of your loved ones this Christmas, consider gifting them a partnership. For Christmas, we're offering for a gifted partnership a discounted price. So check that out at financialissues.org. More financial issues coming up right after this. Stick with us.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
In a time when children are facing unprecedented challenges, the gospel stands as the greatest source of hope. At Crossroads Kids Club, we have the incredible opportunity to bring the message of Jesus into public schools nationwide. Join us in sharing the life-changing hope of the gospel with the next generation. The need is urgent, but God's love is powerful. Together, we can offer Christ's love to children who are longing for it. To join us, visit reachourschools.com. That's reachourschools.com.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. And on top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support Preborn. The donations that you give actually make a difference. Last year, 59,000 babies were saved because of what you have done with your generosity.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
Welcome back, folks. Financial Issues. Make sure to act on the sell alert that we released early this morning on CS25. I saw George in the chat was appreciative of that, had a question on it. And George, I'm glad that sell alert can answer your question. So good stuff there, brother. Good to see you all this morning on Financial Issues. Let's move quickly here to the markets, and then we'll talk about the cash position. So on Monday, NVIDIA's ongoing legal issues with the Chinese government, and listen to yesterday's show if you missed that. We talked about it a little bit. Kind of a catalyst for driving the markets down, particularly the tech-heavy NASDAQ. And it's kind of been a common theme as the tech stocks go. The markets as a whole seem to follow in this last year and a half or so. By midday, major averages were all in negative territory. The Dow Jones was experiencing the least amount of damage of the three. Late afternoon, markets continued their retreat led by the NASDAQ. And then by Monday's closing bell, that's how it ended. Nothing too crazy, but each of the indices in negative territory. The Dow was down a 0.5 percentage point. The S&P was down almost 2/3, and the NASDAQ leading the charge downward was down about 2/3% as well. This morning, as they sit, the market's little changed. The Dow is trending downwards, predicting a down open, while the S&P is right around the flat line and the NASDAQ slightly up. So that's what we're looking at for the markets as we sit right now. All right, folks, so this cash position, it's an important part of your portfolio, especially when you're considering, preservation, downside protection. Part of a good long-term strategy is making sure that you have those things in place. Now, of course, everyone wants the upside gains, and we want to be able to equip you to have that as best you can, for sure. But I do think it's worth saying a long-term wise approach to investing, downside protection is probably even a little bit more important. We want to make sure that you have that protection on the downside, because there's no guarantee that the markets are always going to go up. They've been going up a lot recently, but they could always come down. We want to make sure you have that protection when they do. And I do say when, because it always happens. Now, this is true for all investors, but I think especially if you're someone who's in an older age bracket, you're past that working age, and now you're just at a point where you just want stability. This is really important for you as well. So we got some great clips here coming from our founder, Dan Celia, as well as our current host, Shana. This first clip is of Dan. It's roughly 7 to 8 years ago. I'm not sure exactly when this clip first aired live, but I know it was sometime between 2016 and 2018. The wisdom Dan brings could literally be superimposed to December 10th, 2024. I mean, it's that relevant historically. So just an amazing testament to the way that our founder had an ability to speak in such a way that it could apply even years later. So much of what we do indeed is kind of swimming upstream from a lot of the mainstream investing gurus, and that's what Dan talks about here in this first clip. So this is Dan Celia talking about maintaining your cash position.
We here at Financial Issues held our ground. We're headed towards a recession. We're headed to a severe correction. Don't get into the market. Maintain your cash position. How long have I said that? Now, everybody's saying, wait a minute. I think I'm a little nervous that we could see a correction. I think I'm a little concerned that the markets aren't quite what we thought they were. Really. So this is the problem, folks. This is what we're dealing with. This is what happens when we, the mom and pop investor, it hasn't been the institutional investors. It has not been the insiders of corporate America. They've been net sellers. It hasn't been any of them. It has been the mom and pop investors that are saying, I'm sick and tired of keeping my money in cash, and yeah, I'm not losing anything, but I'm not making anything. Well, then go in the market, get it all in, so that you can make some money for 6 weeks, because I am certain that your financial advisor is going to be wise enough to get out of the market and get back to that cash position the day before everything starts to fall again in 6 weeks. Right? Do I sound frustrated? No, it drives me crazy. It drives me crazy when I see a headline that says, well, stock futures are sliding because of fear in the market. What, as if the fear should have ever gone away? As if the underlying fundamentals of the economy got better. They didn't.
I feel like, waking up in the morning, putting a good warm blanket on to be nice and warm in the wintertime. That's kind of like a Dan rant, on the air, right? Right, Sam? It's just good for the soul, man. It's just really good for the soul. I love it.
It does, and it knocks a little bit of sense in you.
Yeah, it does. So always good to hear our founder's voice on the program. This next clip here, Shana speaks to a caller, and a real good conversation I'd love for you to hear on how to treat cash in the income portfolio. So this is good for you if you're still kind of wondering, okay, how do I look at this? Here's Shana with a caller on financial issues.
I do understand that cash is like a buffer to the volatility of the market. And then I think also that for younger people, it can also be like, quote, dry powder, so that it can be used to take advantage of, I guess, like a downturn maybe in the whole market, or maybe significant downturn in a position. Is that in general correct?
Yeah, it is. So it does help with the stability of the portfolio in times where the market does go down, and it can also be some dry powder. So in the income portfolio, if we see some opportunities, if there are some income stocks, eventually your portfolio will be generating a lot of cash if you're truly an income investor, and hopefully you're spending that, and that's why you're doing that particular model. But for portfolios where you're not spending it, that cash will build up, and that will be more dry powder. And you can look for opportunities, because when prices go down on stocks, as long as their dividend stays the same, the yields go up. So the yield is very dependent on the price of the stock and the dividend payout rate.
Okay. Yes, and then I think I recall in the past Dan talking about keeping the cash position in the income portfolio in particular was, I don't know if it was a year and a half or maybe 2 years of expenses. So this is kind of why I'm asking, because my husband and I, we downsized and we live rather simply, but we are been saving everything we can. And I'm thinking when we get to the income portfolio, which is we expect to do in a few years, we might not need percentage-wise a high cash position, because if there's another way of looking at it, okay, you need to be able to live on the 2 years, you have a buildup of income in there to sell. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so I just want to make the clarification there, though, that emergency funds should be kept separate from your portfolio. So I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about or not, but that shouldn't even be included in the allocation for your portfolio. But having 1.5 to 2 years worth of your income distributions
1 minute
does prevent you from having to sell things in the event of a short-term downturn.
Okay. Yeah. No, our emergency is separate. So yeah, I understand that. And so is that a good number? 18 months or 24 months? Is that what the number was?
Yep.
I just didn't remember.
It
okay.
is.
So then is it fair to say that if my portfolio gets big enough, I may not keep a huge cash position in an income portfolio if I can meet my expenses with some less?
Yeah, so as the portfolio gets larger and you have, as a percentage, the dollar amount that you need for distributions falls down, then you can start shifting some of that cash position into some of the cash equivalents that are going to give you a little bit more dividends and more income for the portfolio.
Good stuff there from our host, Shana Bird. One more clip here from Shana, of course, about making a good yield in money market accounts. So again, has a little bit to do with what we're talking about with this cash position here. This was a partner question that Shana took some time ago, so I hope this can be beneficial for you. Here's that partner question and Shana's answer following.
This is Daniel. He's 48. He says, I have cash at Fidelity and Vanguard automatically held in their money market funds. He mentions the two fund names there. Well, he has to manage this himself with TD Ameritrade and Schwab. If he wants to make more than 0.35% and 0.45% they currently offer. Do you have any advice for him on this, Shana? How to do that?
Yeah, so if you want to spend your time looking for the highest yielding money market, you can do that. But especially, if you're following any of our models right now, there's not a huge allocation to just straight cash. Now, cash in a portfolio is intended to do a couple of things. It's intended to be there to fund any short-term needs for income from the portfolio, or maybe any unintended or unforeseen needs that you might have had, so that you don't have to sell other positions. I don't think it's super, super important. If you only have a 7% allocation toward cash, it's not the most important thing in the world to find the highest yield. And I think you'll spend a lot of time, trying to do that. Now, I would just encourage you, whatever platform that you're using, just, a lot of times they have a default money market. I would just maybe search the platform and see what other money markets they have available for you to use as your default. And if there's something that's been paying a consistently higher rate, then I would switch to that. But I wouldn't spend a lot of time focusing on the highest yield for your cash, because it should be a relatively small part of your portfolio.
Good stuff there, folks. Hey, I got a chat message there. Daniel from Tennessee saying he was the Daniel that question was just referring to. So, Daniel, I hope that question was a satisfactory answer for you. And I hope I articulated it in a way that was somewhat clear. Sometimes my wife will have to tell me, hey, you're just not being very clear. And also, you're not listening to me. And then I'll tell her, what'd you say? No, I'm just kidding. I don't actually do that. But yeah, hopefully that was a clear answer for you, brother. And I hope that you all were able to take something from that conversation there about the cash position. Speaking of which, folks, we do have a new commentary up this week. You're going to want to check that out. Shana got that up. It's usually up early in the week. And so there is brand new commentary up there just talking about what's going on in the markets right now. I would encourage you to check that out. If you're listening to me talk and it sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook, that might mean you're not a partner. And so now's a great time for you to become one for $132 a year. You get access to all of the things that we offer, the portfolio tracker, Shana's conference calls, the weekly commentary, and the asset allocation models, of course, as well, and our comprehensive list of stock picks, as well as mutual funds and ETFs, all biblically responsible. So consider doing that today. If you are a partner already, good practice to get into is to check the commentary periodically, at least once a week. Check that out. You can find news about the buy list updates, which, by the way, is growing right now. So I hope that you're checking that out and seeing where you might be able to redeploy some of that cash. If you have to leave us, folks, we hope you have a great rest of the day. For the rest of you, we got more financial issues coming up right after this break. Stick with us.
Came to Crossroads as a fourth grader. His name had been brought to my attention by the school principal. She was concerned about the direction he was heading.
I remember I wasn't the best kid. I got into trouble a lot.
He became a very active part of Crossroads Kids Club.
Mr. Engel, he was the leader that really impacted my life in so many ways. I honestly didn't want Crossroads to end.
We would invite all the students to come to our youth group here at Waterfront.
I felt God saying, come on, come to me. It felt like I was set free.
And I'll never forget the day when we had the privilege and the honor to baptize Pharrell.
I hugged Mr. Engel. I don't know if he understands. I'm truly thankful to have him through the whole journey. If it wasn't for Crossroads, I probably wouldn't be in the place that I am right now. I wouldn't be a follower of Christ.
Help reach more kids like Pharrell with the hope of the gospel. Visit reachourschools.com.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back, folks. Financial Issues. We're live this morning. Great to be here with you 2 weeks before Christmas. I hope you're getting geared up and getting your Christmas shopping done. I'm almost done mine. I got a couple more things I have to do. But good to be here with you all today.
And here I'm almost about to start.
There you go. There you go. But you'll be all right, Sam. You work great under pressure, right? Well, folks, let's take a look at what the markets are doing here. The Dow has opened in negative territory. So the Dow is down about 0.4%. The S&P 500 is right around the flat line, just below it. The NASDAQ mirroring the Dow, but in positive territory, up about 0.4% as the markets open this morning. That's what we're looking at right now. Oil is hanging right around $68 a barrel, similar to where it was yesterday. Meanwhile, the U.S. 10-year Treasury yield is right around 4.23%, also similar to where it was yesterday. So that's what we're looking like here. We got some inflation data coming out in the middle of this week. Folks, I do want to remind you also, we do not have an ag report today. Craig Halgard is getting the final leg of his surgery done today. So he will be not giving us the ag report for the next few days, but I would urge you to please pray for Craig. I was texting him earlier today. It'll be about an hour and a half or so before the surgery begins. So he's gearing up for that right now as we speak. So if you think of it, please do pray for Craig Halgard for complete healing for him. For the surgeons who are going to be working on him. We just appreciate Craig so much and we love him. So keep him in your prayers, especially today as he's getting surgery done. All right, we got a couple headlines to get to here, Sam. Speaking of being under pressure, Sam works great under pressure with that Christmas shopping, but even better with the headlines on financial issues. So Sam, we've been talking a little bit about what's going on with cryptocurrency. We mentioned it a little bit on yesterday's show. The Trump administration has been active in trying to address this. And we have an update here from one of the Trump administration members who also happens to be a member of his family. What have you got for us there?
Yeah, that's right, Seth.
Yeah.
Yesterday we were talking about how new cryptocurrency czars in the Trump administration are calling for at least somewhat regulation in the industry. And now we have Eric Trump, that would be Donald Trump's son, appearing on CNBC saying basically the same thing. I want to play that clip right now so you can see why he thinks this is a good idea, not only for the American people and the people around the world using cryptocurrency, but also for the industry itself. Here's Eric.
The people in the crypto industry are frustrated that no one's ever put together a sensible plan as to how to regulate an industry. They're fine with regulation, but they just want guidelines, and they've said that. And the problem is you see so many companies have been so unfairly treated, right? So many lawsuits, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, people attacked, companies attacked, and they're just saying, just give us, give us the rules of the road, and we'll obey them. And by the way, if you give us the rules of the road, chances are the rest of the world will follow. And so I think sensible regulation makes a lot of sense.
And Eric goes on to say that he thinks the U.S. needs to be the country that leads the way with the regulation. He says that way the world will follow the U.S. The U.S. will lead by example, will create a, quote, clear roadmap for the crypto industry. Eric also goes on to suggest that our friend Elon Musk would play a, quote, big role in crafting that regulation.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I think Eric's exactly right with that for sure. The United States is the economic leader of the world. And so if the United States sets something forth in crypto, I think the rest of the world definitely follows there, Sam. I think you're exactly right. Sam, it's interesting. We have been calling for this for many years, and that's part of why we've been very cautious about the crypto industry as a whole, is because there's just not a lot of regulation for it. Now, listen, I don't want to try to sound like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. I am no friend to government regulations, but sometimes some things do need to be regulated, right? For example, the law in our country needs to be regulated, right? Like you need to have a police force and different things like that. So there are some times where more regulation can be helpful. And I think this could be one of them here with a type of investment like crypto that is just completely the wild, wild west of investing. We've been seeing it hitting those record highs. I wouldn't be surprised to see it go down considerably as well, just because that's the nature of it, So good to see the Trump administration speaking about this. This seems to be on the conscience of most people as they're trying to figure out their investments. So it just makes sense that this is one of the things that they're talking about too.
Yeah, and I think Eric makes an excellent point point that regulation, at least a little bit of regulation, is not only helpful for the consumer to protect them. I know Dan has talked about how there can be a lot of fraud for the consumer when it comes to purchasing crypto. But Eric also points out that also goes both ways. The crypto industry itself, these businesses, can also be sued and subject to fraud because there really are no rules or guidelines. So anything can happen. So it's even the industry itself that wants at least some rules of the road to know where they're going, what to do, and also how to protect themselves in court.
Absolutely. And then, of course, the flip side of that as well, and I see Lisa in the chat, one of the things that you could like about these cryptocurrencies is that there is no regulation. And Lisa, I think you're right that part of that is a really good thing, that it's free from that government regulation. I will say this, if you need to have some regulation, this is the administration, the one that's incoming, this is the administration to do it, because this would be the administration that would lean much more towards small government. Versus if you had the Biden administration regulating this stuff, boy, you could be seeing a whole lot more problems in terms of regulations, in that way. So just interesting to think about.
Yeah, she's 100% right with that comment. If you regulate it too much, then it kind of defeats the whole point of crypto.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the Trump administration and the economy, Sam, the grass just seems to be looking greener under a new Trump administration. What can you tell us about the household financial outlook?
Yeah, it's amazing how green the grass looks considering it's December. That's quite remarkable. Yeah. So this new poll, it's from a New York Fed survey, shows over 37% of households now expect their financial situation to be better a year from now. And that's the highest number we've seen since before the COVID-19 pandemic. So truly an incredible number there. 37% of households are feeling optimistic. Meanwhile, on the flip side, those who expect their financial situation to get worse, that dropped down to under 21%. And that number is the lowest since May of 2021. So basically the entirety of the Biden administration.
Yeah, absolutely. And, folks, I don't think it's anything like I think most of these people aren't looking at Donald Trump as their savior at all. And we certainly wouldn't encourage that either. We have one savior, that's Jesus Christ. I think what they're looking at is Trump's performance in his first administration. And I think they're also looking at the promises that Trump has made, also the success he's had as a businessman. It's just common sense to think, there's a good chance that the economy could improve under this guy versus the other administration, which would be just a continuation of the previous 4 years where we've seen economic chaos. So I really do think it's just a lot of people are just simply using their brains, and seeing, I do feel pretty confident that it's going to be better a year from now, in an administration where someone is at the top who's a strong businessman who wants to cut some of this government spending and wants to slash the government as a whole, which we approve, certainly. It's just interesting stuff there.
Well, it makes sense, right? Because one of the main reasons people voted for Trump is they thought he was going to make the economy better. That was the number one issue going into the polls. So now that he wins, those same people, they're probably going to be feeling pretty optimistic about the economy.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the economy, Sam, and the grass looking greener as well, folks, big news for you here. I think it's the last time we saw this was in it was sometime in 2021 or 2022. I can't remember, but
it's years long ago, long forgotten by time.
It's been a long time. Gas prices dropped below $3 for the national average. Can you believe that, Sam? That's crazy. What have you got for us there?
Yeah, $3 is now the national gas price average. That's according to Gas Buddy, one of these websites that tracks these sorts of things. This is for the first time since 2021. So again, for the entirety of the Biden administration, we've had national gas prices above $3. Currently, the state of Oklahoma has the lowest average. That's at $2.42 a gallon. Again, according to our friends over at Gas Buddy. And then Hawaii, which makes sense, that has the highest average at $4.48 a gallon.
Yep. And I'm seeing right now live, Sam, as we speak, gas prices right above that. They're at $3.01.
Oh, no, they're making us a liar.
They're making a huge comeback now. But I mean, folks, it is certainly good to see that there. Something to keep in your back pocket of your mind if you need just a reminder of some truth of what really happened in this past administration. A lot of people who maybe want to give the Biden administration a free pass when it comes to gas prices will say the gas prices rose dramatically under the Biden administration because of the Ukraine war. That is not true. They rose in part because of that, but the reason that they rose was several reasons. Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline right away. say. He also has been a president that just in general has pushed for EVs and has pushed for this green energy push here, which has not been friendly to gas companies and to gas prices. I think the national average when Biden entered office, Sam, if I'm correct in this, was right around $2.40.
I think you're right. Somewhere
right around there. 1 year later, before the Ukraine war started, gas prices were up close to $3.50.
So unless the markets are super clairvoyant and they can predict, hey, in 1 year there's going to be a war in Ukraine, I have a feeling that's not what happened there.
Absolutely. I think the attack in Ukraine began right around February 20th or so, 2022. So it hadn't happened for a whole month, and gas prices are already more than $1 from where they were the moment that Biden entered office. So just keep that in mind, folks. Of course, the Ukraine war didn't help, and we saw that spike in prices in the summer of 2022. If you remember, gas prices were up in the high $4 range, something ridiculous like that. But you know what? I think this could all be kind of part of what we're seeing here of a turn back in the other direction, and we're certainly here for it. Absolutely. More financial issues here coming up, folks. Remember to pray for Craig Haugard as he is undergoing surgery today, and make sure to join us on the chat as well. I see a lot of you on there. It's good to see you and good to hear from you. We'll be right back after this break. Stick with us.
The American people are taking a stand against woke policies.
People have had enough. They are watching what's going on and saying, I don't support this. They're making the only argument that's convincing to corporations when they start talking with their wallets. And the corporations are starting to wake up.
Tractor Supply is back.
John Deere announced is phasing out.
Harley Davidson is making a
Lowe's
U-turn.
joins the ever-growing list of companies ditching DEI.
Money talks. So why not have it represent your values? Learn more at financialissues.org.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. On top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support preborn.
Then they sat me down. If you were to die today, do you think you would go to heaven? And I was like, no. Keeping the child was my first stepping stone. And ever since then, God has cleaned me up from the inside out.
Help support women in need. Go to preborn.com/FISM.
Kids all across the nation are facing challenges such as isolation and loneliness and bullying, but there's still hope and the love of Jesus, and we want to bring that to those kids.
Today, Crossroads has 6 focus regions across the country. We are committed to adding 5 more regional coordinators, reaching more kids than ever before. But we can't do it without you.
God is doing something new, and we can see it in the lives of kids across America. Children are finding hope and belonging and community and purpose in the love of Jesus. The gospel is going into schools, and we need your help. We are trusting God to raise $200,000 of new funding. This funding will allow us to have 5 additional focus regions, as well as a team member who will oversee all of our regions. Please join us for this Drive for 5 in 2025. Let's place 5 new team members in cities around the nation and watch what God will do.
To help spread the love of Jesus to children across the country, go to crossroadskidsclub.com/5 in 2025.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Good to see you all this morning. Lisa, Nelson, and Claude, and Ben, and James, and Uncle John, Brian, and Kara, Dave, and Darlene. So many of you on the chat this morning. Did I say Claude already? Claude, good to see you there, buddy, as well. All of you, welcome to the chat. Welcome to the show. And if you're not on the Financial Issues Live chat, you need to be, because it's awesome. So go to financialissues.org, click that Watch Live button. If you go to the show and you click Watch Live, that's how you can get to the chat, and you can join the lively conversation that takes place every day there that we're live on the show. Sam, we got some good news here as well. As we're considering part of the twofold thrust of our ministry, defunding darkness, funding the light, there is darkness out there, and one of the big forms of darkness in our day today is this transgender nonsense. Well, there's some good news coming out of Congress here in terms of the military. What have you got for us?
Very good news indeed, Seth. So this year's National Defense Authorization Act bans transgender procedures for children under the military's health care program. This was the final draft released a couple days ago. I believe they're voting on it this week, but this is the final language in this bipartisan draft bill. Specifically, it says, quote, medical interventions for the treatments of gender dysphoria that could result in sterilization may not be provided to a child under the age of 18. Speaker Mike Johnson is calling the move a, quote, critical and necessary step in the fight against what he called radical gender ideology. And this, of course, comes as the Supreme Court was considering arguments over a law in Tennessee banning these sorts of treatments for kids in the entire state. We talked about that quite a bit last week, as well as Senator Roger Marshall, by the way. He's a Republican from Kansas. He's since introduced a bill trying to ban this across the country, regardless of what state you live in.
Yeah, great stuff there, Sam. Now, you had mentioned this is a bipartisan bill, right?
Yes.
So good. So there's some Democrats who are supporting this also.
Well, the question is, do they actually really support this? Because this is one of those big omnibus spending bills. You're trying to fund everything in the military, and each side tries to slip different things in there that they want. This happens to be something that the Republicans want. And from what it looks like this is probably going to pass, though I've seen some Democrats raising this as an issue, saying, do we really want that? Maybe we want to fund the castration of children through the military. And thankfully, it looks like Mike Johnson is sticking to his guns and saying, like, no, we're gonna make sure that doesn't happen.
Good. And, you know, we had talked about this several weeks ago, how Mike Johnson had originally waffled on the whole question of the transgender bathrooms in Congress, for, example. And then he came back and really kind of put his foot down in a hardline stance there. I'm hoping to see kind of a resolve there, kind of a building up of his courage as he's leading there. Mike Johnson, of course, is a professing Christian. So, boy, good thing for us to be able to be praying for him in such a position of leadership that he has, and very important there also.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Mike Johnson's feeling empowered with the Trump administration coming in, as well as the supermajority. You have the House, the Senate, and the White House all controlled by Republicans. That's something Johnson wasn't working with before. Before, he had this super slim majority in the House, and he was kind of standing alone, fighting back the wolves at the gate. So now I think he's feeling a little bit more of his own power and feels confident that he can push these more cultural issues.
Yeah, good. Yep, absolutely. And of course, folks, this connects so easily to our strategy. We are in the business of defunding the darkness. We rejoice when the institutions that murder children and mutilate children fall. We rejoice, and we want to see that. And the way that we empower you to do that is through your investments. By choosing not to put your money into companies that promote this stuff. That's how we take kind of an offensive sword thrust with it. I've been sword fighting with my son Josiah lately, and you may think, what in the world are you doing at your house, Seth? He is in every bit of the word, he is a little boy, and so he's loving the Chronicles of Narnia right now and all that stuff. And so we've been practicing sword fighting, and I've been teaching him both the right way to block and also the right way to swing, the right way to attack your foe as well. Sometimes when you play at sword fighting, you're just trying to hit the other person's sword, when really you're trying to learn how to actually go for a strike at the enemy and then learn how to block it. Here I am speaking like I'm in the 12th century, but that's just the way it goes.
Question, are we using plastic swords or
we are
old-fashioned stick?
We're using plastic swords. Yeah, we are. But although a stick is a great idea too. But if you're in a war, you need to know how to defend, but you also need to know how to attack. You need to know how to attack. And our attack here at the ministry is the way that we invest. The money that you deploying it in companies that are not partaking in this stuff is an offensive attack against this darkness here. And so we are hoping and praying that we can continue to see this darkness diminished. And I would encourage you folks, be encouraged by this, because we are seeing it diminished. We're seeing a cultural shift here, and we cannot, as so often this mistake has been made in the history of our faith, where Christians win a great victory and then pull back. We need to press forward. We need to push forward. We need to win a victory and then be expecting to win another one and another one and another one. That's how we're going to beat this stuff. So I hope that can be of encouragement for you.
Yeah, Seth, I'm no military tactician, but one thing I do know is that when you have an advantage, you need to press that advantage. And we have the advantage right now, especially on this issue of the transgender demonic garbage coming for the kids. This was one of the top issues that people said in exit polls that made them decide to vote for Donald Trump if they were on the fence, if they were more independently minded, because they just don't like it. And I think that's, we talked about Mike Johnson wavering a little bit. I think he's waking up and saying, no, we have the advantage on our side. Now's the time to do something if we're going to do it. So let's do it right now, because our enemies are fleeing.
Absolutely. Yep. And the tool that we have in hand is our investment dollars. So folks, keep on doing it the way that the Lord has called you to do it, to honor him with your money, being biblically responsible. I want to encourage you with that. Sam, I think we have time to get to one of these questions here. Let's get to a question from social that we had yesterday.
Yeah, let's see. We have Dave and Darlene from Mechanicsville, Virginia, and they're asking a pretty important question from our conversation yesterday. They said, does it really matter who is in the Fed chair position?
That's a great question, D&D, and I appreciate that. As Sam had mentioned, this is kind of built off of what we talked about yesterday. I think, Sam, we shared a headline about Trump's comments that he has no intention of seeking to relieve Jerome Powell of his duties. Kind of that interesting back and forth.
He officially confirmed that. That was up in the air for a while. Is he going to do it? Is he not going to do it? And Trump says, I'm not going to worry about that right now.
So my answer to your question, D&D, does it really matter who's in the Fed chair position? I think it does. Absolutely. It might not matter as much as one might think. There's kind of a mystique around the Federal Reserve and even the position of the Fed chair itself. Sam gave the reference yesterday to it's like Moses coming down Mount Sinai. Every time the Fed chair comes down from the mountain, we're just waiting with bated breath to hear what he has to say. The Fed chair is not in any stretch of the imagination even comparable to the Old Testament leader of the people of God, who God used his power to redeem them through. But nonetheless, the analogy still certainly stands. Everybody waits with bated breath to hear what the Fed has to say. Right?
I think Trump said, he's like, if you want just real power, you want that Fed chair position. He said you flip a coin in a back room and then you wait a couple weeks and then you come out and you say, we're cutting rates. No, we're not. And the markets go wild based on what you say.
That's exactly right. But that's the key there is the Fed chair has a lot of power with what he says, has a lot of power. So I do think it does matter. Yesterday, we kind of wondered, okay, how much difference would it really make if there was someone else held by Powell, if someone else held that position instead of Jerome Powell? That sentiment's valid because you have to wonder, okay, are they all going to be kind of like Powell? But I think at the same time, just picture this. Imagine if we had someone in the Federal Reserve at the Fed chair position who was willing to severely slow down the unstoppable printing of money. Which, remember, the Treasury Department actually prints it, but it's done all at the Fed's behest. So the Fed is the one who's making all of those calls. Someone who's willing to cut that. Someone who is a decisive leader, who's not satisfied with leading from behind, and who is not afraid to hold a government who overspends accountable as well. I think we'd notice a difference. I really do. I think we'd notice a big difference. I don't question... To a degree, I don't question Jerome Powell's financial knowledge just because I don't really know him. I'm also not overwhelmingly confident in it. I'm just kind of neutral about it. What I do question with Powell, unfortunately, is I don't think he's a decisive leader. I don't think he's willing to make decisions and stick to them and make tough calls and not try to play all sides of the political gaming. I don't think that's the type of guy that he is. He has leaned into saying the Fed is apolitical. I think that's his sweet spot. He doesn't want to rock the boat either way. And I think he's shown because of that, he's content with leading from behind. And I just can't help imagine if we had a Fed chair who was more willing to make some of those tough financial decisions, how differently it might look. So all that to say, Dave and Darlene, it's not all on the Fed, of course. You also need a federal government who's willing to come alongside the Fed and cut the incessant spending. I think we have a real probability of that under Trump. The answer to your question, yes, it does matter. The Fed, of course, sets the monetary policy of the nation, controls the printing of money. And as we said as well, the Fed also kind of seems to be one of, if not the most influential force behind the direction of the markets. Earnings season plays a big part in it, absolutely. But I think the Fed really kind of sets the tone for where the markets go. So it's a powerful position for sure. And I think it's good for us folks, as you pray for your leaders, there's going to be a change in power in 2026 there. Jerome Powell's likely going to finish out his term, barring some kind of crazy event. And so in 2026, that position is going to be vacant. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's up to Trump to fill that position. Pray that that position would be filled by someone with conviction. Of course, someone with financial acumen, but someone with conviction, someone who is going to lead the country and cares more about the country than about his own political position. I think it'd be a good thing to pray for. Great show today, as always, folks. It was good to be here. God willing, Shana will be back live tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that very much. I know you all are as well. Until then, it's all His. All belongs to the Lord. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with what God has given to us. God bless you all. See you tomorrow.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.